Hey folks, the Field and Garden Podcast is honored to be partnering with the Growing for Market magazine. They have been publishing practical ideas and information for direct market flower and vegetable growers for over 31 years. All the articles are written by farmers who get their hands dirty and know what they're doing. The magazine is still on the same mission as when the Flower Farmer book author Lynn Basinski founded this magazine back in 1992 to connect growers with the best ideas from other growers. There is dedicated flower content in every magazine, a decade's worth of back issues, and over 1,600 archived articles from writers like Aaron Benzenkane, Gretel Adams, Pamela and Frank Arnowski, and Jonathan and Megan Lease, all available on the website. With 10 new issues every year available on paper, digital, or both, you're guaranteed to find something to fine-tune your farm in growing for market. So if you do farmers markets, CSA, farm stands, pick your own, florist sales, or wholesaling, whether you're a commercial grower or you just want to grow like one, subscribe to Growing for Market for the nitty-gritty details of growing, marketing, and the business of local farming. And I have a special offer for you. Use the coupon code WORKSHOP to get 25% off any subscription to the original Farmer to Farmer magazine at growingformarket.com. Hey friends, welcome back to the Field and Garden Podcast. It is your friend Lisa Mason Ziegler, and thanks for hopping on here with me today. And I mean, what's a better topic to talk about in the middle of the burning heat of July than cool season gardening and farming, right? So before we jump into my cool season checklist, my little things to consider, perhaps. For those of you that are the first time with us, welcome aboard. This podcast is brought to you by thegardenersworkshop.com, and our mission is to make it possible for flower lovers at all levels to grow and enjoy flowers and to even build business on flowers. And we take such great pleasure in bringing all of this to you. Do y'all hear Tucker just woke up? Tucker is my golden retriever, and our podcast recording system, if you want to call it that, is I do this early on Saturday mornings, and oftentimes he sleeps right through it. But I can see that I'm going to have to, he has one of those crinkle toys, and he just loves chewing on it, and he is giving me the evil eye right now. So anyway, so sorry about the background noise, but that's the reality of me, that I live with this big doggy that isn't quiet, and we just we'll do the best that we can here, right? So welcome aboard. And before I jump in, I do want to just read you a super sweet little short note. And it just, we get so many precious notes from people, and I don't always get to read them just because they don't all filter to me at the time that I'm doing podcasts. And so this one came to us, and it actually came with a little envelope of confetti, because we're worthy of celebration, Claire says. So this came back several months ago. Lisa, I just finished your basic course, and I am so grateful for the generous information you shared. Thank you for all your time and energy to create and offer a resource like this to aspiring flower farmers, gardeners, and established farmers. It was packed full of goodness. I feel even more excited to take on my first season. Celebrate the end of another great class. I hope you and your crew have a wonderful season. Sincerely, Claire. Y'all, you may not understand how great it is to have affirmation. I mean, think about one of your flower customers just making a point to come to you and say, those flowers were just beautiful. We enjoyed them so much. It just makes you like, okay, it's working. So thank you, Claire, for those kind words. And with that, I will jump right into our subject today, which is the cool season checklist. Now, I will say that I was certainly under this illusion years and years ago, is that most of us think that cool to cold weather growing or gardening or farming, whatever you're doing, is more brutal than warm season gardening. Warm, hot, thinking about fall and winter versus spring and summer. Most of us think it would just naturally be easier in the spring and summer. But I have found that to not really be true, not for me anyway. And, if you just really think about it, cool season, the cool season itself, forget about the plants. Cool weather, there's less pest pressure, there's more precipitation of many different ways, right? From rain, snow, ice, hail, in the fall and through winter and really early spring, versus with those cool temperatures, whatever precipitation you do get lasts a lot longer, versus later spring and into summer, into the heat of the summer. For many of us, you perhaps aren't getting the precipitation on a very regular basis, meaning rain. And what rain you do get dries up so fast because, friends, oh my gosh, it was 90 something degrees here, typically this time of the year, and it's not uncommon. And I'm telling you, if without some precautions, you really lose what moisture you get, whether you're laying it down with irrigation or if it is raining. And in the summer, the pest and weed pressure needs constant policing. It's the way I look at it. It's like I am the bouncer of all things pests, all weeds, and just being there for my plants and my garden. And I just find that there is so much less of that needed with cool season gardening. And it just feels to me like the warm season plantings definitely need more intervention than cool season. That is, and here's the hook, y'all, if you make the right choices for your cool season gardening, which I'm going to go over those choices here in just a moment, when you just follow a few ground rules with cool season gardening, you kind of set yourself up to be, really to be successful. Years and years ago, when one of the very first seed collections that Suzanne and I made for the Gardener's Workshop, the Gardener's Workshop is my website. Do you hear Tucker? He loves that toy that has the crinkly stuff inside. The Gardener's Workshop is our website, which has our online garden shop on it that sells the same tools, seeds, and supplies that you hear me mention and that I use on our farm, right? So one of the very first seed collections that we created, golly day, back in 2005, we named it the Lazy Gardener Seed Collection. And that was made up of those direct seed, preferred to be direct seeded, cool season hardy annuals that get fall planted. And it was called the Lazy Gardener for all these reasons that we're going to talk about. Because when you just follow a few ground rules, you literally don't have to do much. So, when you nail those ground rules, friends, I just can't say this enough, because when people reach out to us with failures, almost always I'll say, well, tell me about, what'd you do? It's like, oh my gosh, there was such a red flag that people just don't even realize, right? So winter growing is forgiving when you just kind of try to hit some of the ground rules. All right, so let's just start right at the top. And I will say that there is a resource on our website that you can, it'll be, the link to it'll be in the show notes. I did this last year or a couple years ago. It's called the Cool Season Flower Chronicles. And it was a 5-week series of a 30-minute or less video. And I addressed all the really common problems, questions that people were sending to us. And I really highly recommend it. If you haven't really embraced this whole cool season concept, which y'all, I didn't make this up. Our grandmas and great grandmas used to follow this. They were in tune with a garden, and it kind of fell off of our radar. And so it seems so opposite. We think, back to that whole how we think warm season is easier. We think it's easier because we're more familiar with it. We know about warm season gardening. We aren't so familiar with cool. So I highly recommend that you visit the Cool Season Flower Chronicles. In addition to the 5 videos that are there are some other resources. There are links where you can request webinars I've done on Cool Season Hardy Annuals. There's a planting guide. There's a lot of stuff there. So to hit the highlights of what you will find more information about there, the number one thing you need to know is what is your winter hardiness zone. I want to also say, friends, this is not a guessing game. All of this information is available online, and that's where you need to build your foundation. So you can put into a search engine your zip code and what is my winter hardiness zone, and you can figure that out. I would suggest that you start a little cool season gardening notebook, and that's the first piece of information you need. The second piece, which is just as important but used in a different way, is what is your historic first expected fall frost and your last expected spring frost. Again, this is not a guessing game. There is information available online. Yes, I know the weather patterns are changing, but you have to have some historic information to build from. So put into a search engine your zip code and say, when is my first expected frost? And something will come up, and do the same thing for your last expected spring frost. And friends, those 3 pieces of information is what you build your whole cool season growing situation on. So you do not need to get lost in a rabbit hole. It's just a jumping off point, people. And I get all kinds of long emails from people saying what the internet said and then how their personal experience has varied from that. You just have to find a spot to work from, right? And then go for it and then build your own planting guide. All right. So, key. The next step is to make a list of those cool season hardy annuals, which you can find on my website, thegardenersworkshop.com. Go to my store, go to seeds, and there's a cool season seed category. And you can just scroll through there and look at what the hardiness zone is, okay? That's the simplest place, I would say, because there are some in there that are not in the book, Cool Flowers. You are going to make a list. You can actually make your 2 lists, the first and the second one. You have 2 planting window opportunities. One is fall planting, and one is very early spring planting. You can go through that seed list and put them under which column. Is it winter hardy in your winter hardiness zone? Then you can fall plant that. You can again plant it in very early spring. That's a whole nother conversation. But you always, in my opinion, choose to fall plant anything that is winter hardy in your zone because you get more abundance, less work to establish it. You get more disease and pest issues. It blooms earlier. There's a lot of great reasons why. So you need to create this list of when you plant cool season hardy annuals. In the fall, if it's winter hardy in your zone. If it's not winter hardy in your zone, then you plant it in very early spring. Again, this means everybody plants cool flowers or cool season hardy annuals. We all just perhaps plant at different timing. All right, so you make your list so you know when you're planting. And I'm not going into when is fall planting. That's what Cool Flowers, the book, and the Cool Season Flower Chronicles will help you with. So once you know what you're planting, then you need to select your location of where you're going to plant that fall planted garden and that very early spring garden. The two things that I think people don't consider and think about, the number one thing is, this is what kills more cool flowers than anything else: poor drainage. A site that has poor drainage, typically you can get away with some kind of iffy drainage when you're planting in that spot in the spring and summer. Because guess what, friends? It's hot outside. Water is evaporating. It kind of masks drainage issues. But let me tell you, that is not the case when you're talking about overwintering or very early spring planting and growing plants. You need excellent drainage, and the best way to get that is to really build some great raised beds, which we'll talk about in just a minute. But that's the first thing you need to think about. If you have an area that you're suspicious of poor drainage, I'd pick somewhere else if I could. And you need to think about fixing that problem over the long haul of gardening. The other thing is you really want to have full sun. Coffee break, y'all. And thank goodness Tucker now has a quiet toy. He is now nuzzling Winnie the Pooh. Full sun. Think about the sun being lower in the sky and the leaves are off the trees. I have an area that this coming year I think is where I'm going to put cool flowers, and it gets the best winter sun. That just means that winter you can make the most out of the sunshine, right? Because I use Bio 360 with the black side up on my beds, and I hoop and cover. That creates like Palm Beach under the hoop, y'all. I mean, if you're getting sun as long as possible during the winter days, the days are shorter, the sun is lower, yada, yada, yada. Think how much better that would be, right? So select your location with those things in mind. Great drainage, maximize the sunshine, and then we'll talk about in a minute, maximizing some of these tools that you can help to enhance your cool flowers. The next piece of information that I get we get so many failures from folks because they literally did not even read the seed packet instructions or cool flower recommendations or some of these other many resources that we offer. Seeds have a preferred way of being started, meaning the easiest way to get them to sprout and germinate and grow. Some prefer direct sowing, some prefer transplants. And I'm not going to go into what the difference is. All those other resources really talk about those. But you need to know which way the seeds that you're going to be planting or starting prefer to be started. That is huge. I mean, I get so many comments from people struggling with Bells of Ireland. Friends, I have perfected getting bells of Ireland to have great germination. You know, I store their seed in the freezer, so when I pop them out in the fall, because I fall plant them, I soak them to soften the seed a little bit, and I direct seed them out in the garden. And guess what? We get so much germination, I have to thin the heck out of them because I still every year oversow them because I'm afraid they're not going to sprout. There are some people that have good success with starting them indoors, but they are the exception to the rule. You have to you don't need to reinvent the wheel. You just need to look at the resources to see what has been the majority of people's best way to start this and follow it. If you want to be an experimenter, fine, but know that there is an easier path. So know which way your plants want to start. Now, back to the raised beds. Raised beds, in my opinion, are a must for everybody, for year-round gardening, in my experience, for a lot of reasons. But definitely for the cool season hardy annuals. They need that lift out of the ground. Not only does the soil warm more, but the drainage issue is so beneficial. I have found that, cool season hardy annuals, in my experience, have been a little bit more sensitive to wet feet. But in addition to that, cool seasons, have more wet feet conditions, so you really, really need to lift them. Now, when I do my plantings in the fall, I will add that fall, the only time I ever direct seed in the garden for any plant is in the fall. And that's with some cool season hardy annuals. And it's for all those reasons that I mentioned previously, that weed pressure and having to water more is why I don't do it in spring and summer. I mean, it is just very difficult to get a good stand. It's a lot of work to get a good stand to plant. It's far easier to transplant. So for all of my beds that are transplanted in the fall, I use raised beds with Bio 360, which is the biodegradable film with the black side up, so that black side up all winter long will just be given a little smidge of a benefit to my soil, better than nothing on that soil, right? Or just plain mulch of whatever organic matter. So black side up, that's for transplants. For those beds that I direct seed in the fall, there is no mulch on the bed, and I tend to those beds by hoeing about every 10 days until we go into deep winter after they've started to germinate. And, I can't tell you, by making the proper choices makes all the difference in the world, y'all. One of the things I perhaps think that we're best known for is the tidiness of our garden. And it's not that we're slave workers out there. We're not chained to our garden. We just make the right choices and do it at the right time. And I'll talk here and next about knowing when the trigger point is to plant, because that's a big part of success with these planting. So let's just say this. You don't want to plant too early for cool flowers, and that is where most people jump the gun. They plant when it's still too warm and even hot outside. And if you're planting transplants, you will toast them in the black film. But with direct seeded stuff, they won't germinate. They will just sit out there and wait. But guess what does germinate? All of the native plants, better known as weeds, will germinate and take your beds over. So that's perhaps one of the most intense times for me of the farming year, is in the fall, watching the weather patterns, knowing when I should plant, but then tweaking that plan to what the weather patterns are actually going to do. So The cool flower concept for fall says that you should have your transplants ready to go in the ground 6 to 8 weeks before your historic first frost, and or you should have your direct seeded seeds ready to go in the ground at that same timeline. But the added tweak to that is you have to watch your weather patterns, because it's definitely fall seems to go on longer, or not really fall, summer seems to go on longer now. So I take that timeline and then I look at our weather forecast, 2-week forecast, and I'm looking for nighttime temperatures. Daytime doesn't really mean a lot to me with this whole cool flower thing. It's all about the nights, because the nights are what really contributes so much to our soil temperatures and how we're heading into winter, in my experience. And I'm looking for nighttime temperatures to be in the 60s, so from 60 to 65 degrees for the next 2 weeks at night is the go, go, go for fall planting of cool flowers. And if you're really delayed, then you start biting your nails and just wait for that window, or you take some extraordinary steps. What would that be? If I was planting cool flower transplants and my transplants were gorgeous right now, and the next 2 weeks are still too warm, and I'm planting into Bio 360 and those beds are ready and waiting, what I would probably do is put a light layer of mulch on that Bio 360. That just gets rid of the black factor, y'all. That cools down the surface so I can plant. Direct seeding, I just wait. I wait until that time is there, because here's the other bailout. So let's just say it's too hot, you're waiting to direct seed, and you go from hot to cold, or colder than you think. Because here's the thing about direct seeding. Direct seeding needs some heat to germinate. That's why you plant 6 to 8 weeks before your first fall frost. You can always hoop and cover that direct seeded bed to heat it up and to create a better environment if you go directly from 80-degree nights to 50-degree nights, right? So keep that in your back pocket, because in my book, transplants are better to plant later than earlier. Following that tip I just gave you, cover your beds with a little mulch of any type just to get rid of that black surface, to cool it down for those transplants. And you're better to follow the direct sowing recommendation, following the cool flowers concept. And remember, when you're direct seeding, you really have to, Dave Dowling recommends watering every single day to get those seeds germinated and up. And I kind of go along with that. Here's another thing on your checklist. Do you have enough hoops and row covers? Nothing is worse. Because we offer and sell hoops and row covers, we get orders that are followed up with emails of people freaking out because they don't have hoops and row covers and they have extraordinary temperatures coming that they are not prepared for. Most often, it's because they've now realized that they have planted a fall planted plant that's not really winter hardy in their zone. I highly recommend, particularly when you're learning this concept, to stick with those fall plantings of plants that are winter hardy in your zone. You can experiment all you want, but you have to realize it's an experiment. And if you're experimenting, you better have hoops and row covers to back you up if you in fact need it. Because when you experiment beyond your winter hardiness zone, you got to give them a little help. You have to think about your microclimates, meaning, if you plant up against your house, you can get away with a zone maybe. You've got to have hoops and row covers. You got to make sure they're in full sun all day long. There's all kinds of things you can do to help. But for the best success, stick with what is winter hardy in your winter hardiness zone to get your boots on the ground, to have great success. Are you ready to plant cool flowers. It's mid-July, friends, but you better start hopping to it. I hope you're getting your seeds, you're getting your supplies, and you're getting your plan in order. In fact, I always know where my cool flowers are going to be planted this fall and very early spring, back in January and February of this year, because of the way that I just evolve my beds around my farm. And, you need to be thinking about where are you going to be planting in fall so that your warm season stuff that's still going strong in fall is not where you want to put your fall planted stuff. And here's another huge fact. Those of us that are also or going to be only planting in very early spring, you've got to prepare those beds in fall. Beds 6 to 8 weeks before your last spring frost, which is the very early spring window, it is either frozen, covered in snow, but for sure too wet to work soil. You have to get those beds 100% ready in the fall and cover them some way or fashion. And I talk about all that in the Cool Season Flower Chronicles. You have to get them ready. So I highly recommend you, first off, if you haven't read my book, Cool Flowers, get it, read it. And there's a book study to go along with it. And when you buy the book from us, you automatically get it, or you can request it on that Cool Season Flower Chronicle page. There is a ton of resources, y'all. This is what you need to do to spend your time doing on hot afternoons when you should not be outside working, from 2 to 4. That is your cool flower revival time, right? So, friends, I hope this has helped. And I really feel like this is, we're starting to talk about cool flowers earlier in the summer because everybody is planting or starting too late, and then they don't have success because they're trying to plant in the dead of winter. And now think about the retailers. You know how they put bikinis out in January and February? Because they want to get them out in front of us, because there are people going to Palm Beach, y'all, when it is summer, that time of the year. Think when those designers had to design those bikinis, buy that material, design that material. We're in the same deal. If you're in business, or if you really want a great spring garden, if you want a garden full of bells of Ireland, sweet peas, snapdragons to die for, poppies, all of those, you got to think about it more often and in the season before you need the season. And friends, hop on over to thegardenersworkshop.com. Check out the Cool Season Flower Chronicles. The link is down below. You'll find the Cool Season seed list there on the shop. And we just have a ton of resources over there, friends. And as always, if you need supplies, we appreciate when you shop with us. That helps to bring you all of these resources. And also our online courses, Flower Farming School, my course, The Basics. Registration is in the fall. And we just hope you're going to jump on board with us. All right, friends, I would love to see you over on social media and on our new shopping app. Oh, friends, the Gardener's Workshop live shop is where I share our harvest, giving the 411 on growing those flowers and special deals, and you only will find it inside the Gardener's Workshop live shop app. It is ever evolving, friends. I hope this has helped. Give us a review if you're liking us, and please share it with your friends. Until we meet again, friends, ciao.